If you ever heard the term data pipeline and felt confused, you are not alone. Data pipelines involve many moving parts, which can make them hard to understand at first. In this video, I will walk you through those parts step by step using simple explanations and a real world example. So let's get started. Here is what we will cover today. First, why data pipelines often feel confusing. Then, what a data pipeline really is. Starting at a high level and then looking at the core stages of a data pipeline. After that, I will walk you through a real world data pipeline example. We will also compare batch and real time data pipelines. Then we will zoom out and look at the bigger picture, how the tools and data fit together. And finally, we will wrap it up with a few key takeaways. Before we talk about how data pipelines work, let's first understand why they often feel confusing. For many people, it starts with too many tools, too many names. You have heard the terms like SQL, ETL, ELT, batch, OLTP, OLAP, often all of them at the same time. On top of that, different terms are used for very similar ideas, which makes it even harder to connect everything together. Another challenge is that it's hard to see the big picture without first understanding the basics of a data pipeline. And without a clear picture of how data flows through a data pipeline, things can quickly start to feel disconnected. Job descriptions can add to this by combining tools, concepts, and buzzwords, which makes everything feel even more overwhelming. So, in this video, we will slow things down and focus on clarity first. We will start with the fundamentals before moving on to the tools or data architectures. Let's understand what a data pipeline is. First, data comes from different sources. It could be databases, applications, IoT devices, Excel files, and many more. That data is basically then collected, processed, cleaned, and organized into a form that is usable. And finally, that data is consumed through dashboards, reports, or other systems. You can think of it like this way. Imagine you have some data in Excel files and some data in databases. You bring all of that data together, connect it, and turn it into a simple, clean table. Then that table is then used in creating dashboards to track progress and make decisions. Now that you know what a data pipeline looks like at a high level, let's deep dive and understand it step by step. Now let's break down a data pipeline into its core stages. The first stage is data sources. This is where data originally come from. Things like applications, databases, cloud storage, IoT devices, Excel files, and many more. The next stage is data ingestion. Data ingestion simply means bringing that data into the system. At this stage, we are not cleaning or transforming the data yet. We are just moving the data from where it lives into our pipeline. After data ingestion comes data storage. This is where the raw data is stored safely so that it can be accessed, processed, and reused later. Depending on the organization's architecture, This storage layer could be a data warehouse or a data lake. Once the data is stored, we move to the data processing layer, also known as the data transformation layer. This is where the actual work happens of cleaning the data, transforming the data, joining it, and organizing it into a useful structure. And finally, we have data consumption. This is where the processed data is used in dashboards, reports, or by other systems. This data also can be used by data consumers like data analysts, uh, data scientists, and many more. You may also hear the terms like ETL and ELT. These simply describe when the data transformation happens, like before loading the data or after loading the data into the data storage layer. Don't worry, we will deep dive into that in the further video. So almost every data pipeline you will encounter follows the same flow from left to right, and once you understand these stages, the tools and technologies start to make much more sense. Now let's look at a real world example of a data pipeline. Imagine a company that sells product online. They want to analyze their sales performance. But the data of sales is coming from multiple places. Some data comes from sales database, some comes from website, some arrives as Excel files from different teams, and another data comes as logs or in JSON file. All of this data right now is scattered and is in the different formats. So what we do is we bring all of the data into at the central place or a central location. That could be a data warehouse or a data lake. Once the data has been stored at the central place, next step is data processing or data transformation basically. This is the step where the data is cleaned and standardized. For example, there are dates which were not in the correct form. So the dates are formatted in the same way, products names are aligned, sales number are validated. After that, the data is combined into a single clean table. Then that clean table feeds the dashboards and reports so that the teams can track their performance and make decisions based upon that. So this is exactly how the data pipeline work in the real world by turning the messy, scattered data in different formats into something useful. Now that we understand what a data pipeline is, let's look at batch and real-time pipelines. At a high level, both pipelines follow the same idea. Data comes in, data gets processed, and then it is used. But the key difference between batch and real-time pipelines is when the data gets processed or basically when the data gets refreshed. In a batch pipeline, data is collected over a period of time in the form of batches. For example, daily or monthly. And then that data is processed together to create reports or dashboards. So if a new record is added to a sales table, it won't immediately appear in the dashboard. It will only show up after the next scheduled data refresh. Because of this, a small delay is usually acceptable. Whereas in real-time data pipeline, data is processed as soon as it arrives. Like the data pipeline runs continuously without waiting. It keeps on processing the data and it shows the data instantly on the dashboard. This makes the real-time pipeline useful when the speed really matters. For example, in cases of like fraud detection or real-time monitoring, real-time pipelines are useful. So the core idea of the pipeline stays the same. Only when the data is processed or the data is refreshed, that changes. Let's summarize this with a few simple points and examples. Batch pipelines process data in chunks and usually run on a schedule. They are good fit when a slight delay is acceptable. For example, sales reports, monthly revenue summaries. Whereas in real-time data pipelines, it processes data instantly and run continuously. They are used when data needs to be available immediately. Examples here include like live order tracking or fraud detection. So it's not about one being better than other. It's about choosing the right pipeline based upon the requirements and like how fast the data needs to be available. So far, we have looked at what data pipelines are, how they work, and how data flows through them. Now let's zoom out and look at the big picture. Let's understand how tools and data fit together across an entire data pipeline. This diagram shows the full data pipeline from start to end. On the left, we begin with the data sources. The data comes from various places. It could be from applications, databases, logs, or event data, and many more. After that, the next stage is data ingestion. This is where the data is brought from all the source systems into the data pipeline. Ingestion can happen in different ways, like using APIs, batch jobs, or streaming systems. At this stage, you might use Python scripts or Spark or data ingestion tools like Fivetran or Airbyte for the ingestion purposes. After the data has been ingested, the next step is to store that data into a central location. This is usually a data lake or a data warehouse where the data is stored safely. The common data warehouses you might hear are Amazon Redshift, BigQuery, Snowflake, and many more. So once the data has been stored, the next step now is data processing, also called as the data transformation step. This is where the data is cleaned, joined, aggregated into a form that's actually useful. You might hear about tools like DBT, which helps to transform the data directly inside the data warehouse using SQL. After data processing, the data reaches the data consumption stage. This is where the data is finally used in dashboards, reports, or machine learning models. At this stage, the data is typically consumed by data analysts, data scientists, or business users. You will notice that different tools appears at different stages, but the stages themselves stays the same. Every organization follows the same flow. The only difference is which tools they choose to build their data architecture. Across all of these stages, there are also cross-cutting concerns, and these include orchestration, monitoring, data quality, and security. Orchestration basically means scheduling and coordinating these steps so that they run in correct order. And some of the popular orchestration tools you might hear is Airflow. Monitoring basically means making sure that the pipeline is running properly, checking whether the data is refreshing on time, and catching failures early. Data quality basically ensures that the data is accurate, reliable, no missing values, no wrong data types, or incorrect records. And security controls who can access the data and what they are allowed to do with it. All of these concerns don't belong to just one stage. They support the entire data pipeline. Once you see the data pipeline this way, tools start to feel much less confusing. They are simply the pieces that fit into a big picture, a system that turns raw, messy data into clean, useful data that people can actually use. Let's quickly recap the key takeaways. First, data pipelines take raw, messy data and turn it into usable insights for people. Second, every data pipeline follows the same core stages, and they are data sources, data ingestion, data storage, data processing, and data consumption. Third, while pipelines may look different across companies, they all follow a similar structure. Fourth, tools change based upon business needs, but the fundamentals always remain the same. And finally, the choice between the batch and real-time pipelines depends on how quickly the data is needed. If you understand these ideas, you understand data pipelines. Everything else is just implementation of the details. I hope this video gave you clarity. If you found this helpful, make sure to subscribe for more videos like this. Thank you.